We're back. So it really seems like, I love how you were pointing that out, about Avodas Hashem and Achdus Hashem. And really, it seems like we're starting with when the Yechida is like at the identity, like your deepest part of your soul, the part that is one with Hashem, with God, the Pintele Yid that we've been talking about. It seems like the other parts that we're talking about, like we said, Avodas Hashem, all of that, when somebody taps really into and has in mind, I want to live from my truest identity. These are the ways that it expresses itself. So it says that when you're living like from your identity, from your Yechida, it's like you have a recognition of Achdus Hashem, that everything is unified. That every person, every fellow Jew that I see I'm one with, or even with any other creation.
Yeah.
A little bit towards the conclusion, like you mentioned them different parts and a nice overview of the book. Perhaps we can talk a little bit about, what's the goal of Chassidus and Dir B'Dachtonim, and how the Yechida that we've been touching on relates to Mashiach, and what really does, like we were talking about definitions and defining things by Torah definition. Also, what is Mashiach? Because a lot of the world, at least growing up, we have a different understanding of what it as a period of time means, as well as the person.
Okay, so let's just say this. This world has a lot of confusion because it's so diverse. I guess the world has a lot of confusion because the world is so diverse. A big part of the diversity of the world is what makes up for the strife and conflict that is both external and internal as well. We're always struggling to juggle, both in personal life, right, in society, right, work versus home. There's always going to be a juggle where we find ourselves kind of torn between different places. Right? There's the struggle of the body and the soul. Right? That's a very, very similar struggle. Right? But what happens is that almost everything can be summarized is that there is division. And the division makes it very difficult, right, and sometimes impossible for us to properly find unity, properly find cohesive serenity, right, and so on and so forth, because there's simply so much division. What is Mashiach? Right, so chapter 6 of the book goes to look into the personality of Mashiach, and why is it that the time of Mashiach is really focused on this, so much about the leader, this protagonist who's going to lead the Jewish people into this era of perfection. One could easily wonder that the role of Mashiach may be a little bit more overemphasized than it need be. It's known as the days of Mashiach, Yemos HaMashiach, right? Why is it so much the leader? Who is he, right? That makes all this difference. But ultimately, the Kabbalistic definition of Mashiach, which we arrive at, Mashiach is the Yechida. And what the world is exactly lacking is unity. What Mashiach is going to do is Mashiach is going to bring all parts of existence together, bringing together uncovering its unified voice, and doing so, he'll be accomplishing what we call in the book the Yechida effect, where all of the world will fall into place, where things will be whole again, things will be right again. Mashiach will be a time of peace, because we're going to be at peace with ourselves, and we're going to be at peace with society. Mm-hmm. I started in chapter 2, start talking about the purpose of Sinai, the purpose of the Torah being given. And Maimonides' words, the Rambam, who says that the entire Torah is only given to bring peace to the world. The Torah is the world's peacemaker.
Its ways are pleasant and peaceful, actually.
Exactly. So it's about shalom. It's about peace. How? So if anybody is looking for inner peace, right? Where do you find that answer? Where do you find inner peace? Where do you find cohesiveness? So this is the mission of the Torah, and this is the success, right, of the Torah's mission as culminated by Mashiach to bring everything together, to see it all as one. God shows our world, our diverse world. He shaped this world for a purpose, and that purpose is that within the diversity of this world, oneness should be achieved, and Him, the ultimate one, God, should be able to be comfortable within our diverse world. Right? It's as known as Chassidus as the Dira B'tachtonim, right? The dwelling for God in the lowest world. This world becomes a home for Him. Right? As pointed out, actually in chapter 11, Tachtonim is a plural, is a plural term. Right? That means every person has their own element of it, and actually multiple elements of it, and it's about bringing it together.
Actually, how perfect that we're doing this during a Hakel year of when it's time of gathering.
Exactly. So actually, while we're talking about the basics of Chassidus, and as you just connected it to the year of Jewish unity and connection, right, of Hakel, which is the biblical time of gathering, I also want to put forth, it's available online. It's available online for purchase and for download. We have the basics of Chassidus, Hakel, the inside story.
Wow.
Right. So this came off the press 2 weeks ago, and it's a 62-page book, lit, right? A forthcoming chapter from, right, a book, actually volume 7 of the series, right? And that
volume 7?
Volume 7 of the series.
But isn't this book volume 1?
That is book volume 1, and in honor of Hakel, I put aside some of the work on book 2 and book 3 that I'm currently engaged in to produce Hakel, the inside story.
You just went from 1 to 7.
Okay, so let me tell you a little bit more about this project here for a moment. Although I do quite a bit of the writing for this work, this project is a little bit bigger than myself. It starts with Rabbi Nissen David Dubov of Wimbledon, England, South London, and who's been teaching Chassidus and Kabbalah for decades, authored numerous books, and he had the vision of creating a unified body where it can be a reference to anybody, it can be a course of education for whoever's, for anybody, where you're going to have the wealth and the span of Chassidus, all in one, all in English, accessible for all. So that's right. That was his vision, and he got in touch with Sichas in English, which is our publisher, and then they got in touch with me, and then that's how we got rolling. The goal is not just to have a great book about what is Chassidus. That's just book 1, but the goal is to also present clearly and in a accessible manner what Chassidus teaches. So Chassidus has a tremendous wealth of teaching. So let's talk about Chassidus has tremendous depth into understanding the spiritual, right? Who is God? Right, the divine attributes, the Kabbalistic, or you could almost call the theological element of Judaism. Right, Chassidus offers a whole bunch about that. Chassidus sees a lot of what goes on in the spiritual as the framework and context of our world and our personal lives. So that all that wisdom is going to be collected in 2 books, which was currently being worked on, right? Volume 2, The Building Blocks of Existence. Volume 3, Seder Hishtalshlus, explains Seder Hishtalshlus is that chain of descent into our world through the spiritual. So that's that. You're going to have Torah mitzvahs on the Jewish people in volume 4, and that is going to cover a whole wealth of it, what Chassidus offers, and then you have the illumination and the light that Chassidus offers into Judaism. So the mitzvahs that are performed on a daily basis, that's going to be the subject of volume 5. What is the Chassidic expression to prayer, to daily mitzvahs, to work, to trust in God, to giving charity, the entire range of things that we encounter day to day. What is the light of Chassidus on those topics? Volume 6, Shabbos, around the year 7. That's where Hakhel fits in. And then we have coming up to life cycle in volume 8. And we have a whole wealth of Chassidus being prepared currently to give not just a translation of one particular teaching, but as you'll notice from picking up the book, right, it's a interwoven tapestry that really tries to present the rich wealth of Chassidic wisdom and in a relatable and hopefully approachable manner.
Beautiful. I must say, through reading the parts that I've read so far, for one, I'm excited to finish it, and 2, hearing you and talking with you today, I really enjoy and resonate with the language of which you yourself share Chassidus, because like we learn in Chassidus, the words that we use and the way that we scribe things not only is a reflection of our own internal world and how we see the world, but it has an effect on truly describing things and for the world. And so the way that you're able to put it together is from a point of view, pretty much like from the Yechida, like from the identity. If this is who I truly am, how do you describe certain things as, attributes and extension? So thank you very much, and God willing, the rest of the volumes from 2 to 7 should come out now or should come out already during the times of Mashiach.
Amen. Amen. We're looking forward. So you have the. I'm actually not sure about the series continuing as in the arrival of Mashiach. I think it will be up to Mashiach to decide how that is meant to be done, right? But every project has its people, because that's how God's divine providence presents itself.
Yeah.
You get involved in doing whatever you're doing. For me, this book all just started with one phone call, right? Just in the middle of a regular afternoon. So the same thing really applies. So we all do our part in bringing Mashiach, and whatever opportunities are presented to us, those are the ones we go for, right? And of course, always look out for some new ones, right? And we all try to do our part, and then it all comes together as a cohesive picture. So if there's any rearranging, there's the famous prophecy that in the future, we won't be necessarily teaching each other. Why? Because kulam yedu oisi, all will know me, says God. Right? So in a certain sense, when we're just sharing this knowledge now, we're just getting a little bit of a flavor of what we'll know so intuitively and inherently when Mashiach comes. We're all trying to just discover who we are inside, our identities. Right?
It gets to your point, yeah. No, it gets to the point about the Yechida, because
exactly
when you internalize that, well, hold on a second. The Yechida is my deepest part of myself, and that is one with God, literally, as we say. And God transcends above time and space, and he knows everything and is everything. So therefore, I too know everything already. So that's the way I'm remembering.
I hear you. That's definitely an interesting one. I definitely feel like when you meet somebody, when you meet somebody and you just offer, you offer some neshama, you talk to the neshama, right? You know, a person, let's say, maybe fresh into the mitzvah and is unfamiliar, and what you're sharing, whatever information you're sharing, is kind of almost like a password being recognized by a device just because it's right. Right? It's like, not necessarily does the person always understand exactly the importance of the mitzvah or its background. They're not necessarily able to be educated in 5 minutes, right? But it just rings right. I'm a Jew. It's a Jewish thing to do. This just makes sense. That voice within is really, it's picking up the signal that this is really, really intimately familiar. This is me. Yeah. This is part of me, right? And that is ultimately what's so beautiful about Judaism, that no matter where you're going to share, so you're going to share Torah and mitzvahs with another Jew, you're only just going to be giving them what is already theirs. You're just uncovering what's already within. And ultimately, you're not giving anything new. You're just going through the thought processes, right? Getting us to all focus on what's really going on. And that is just so beautiful to be part of that picture, right? To just, what's the best thing to be? To be yourself, right? And that's what Chassidus is all about, right? The mission of Chassidus is for us to truly be who we are, right? And be at peace with who we are, in a way that we can be super active based on who we are, because it's not about motivation, it's about identity. Yeah. And it just all ties together. Yeah. It just all ties together. And this time of Hakel is definitely a very, very beautiful time to focus on this message. So success to you in continuing your podcast, your new season, and getting into it and connecting and inspiring listeners. And I guess to the listeners, listening is just the first step, right? But then once hopefully this podcast maybe triggered something within, resonated within, then you become the loudspeaker as well. Then it's your turn to go ahead and take these messages, take these teachings, right, to the next level, both in personal life, both in sharing it with others, and paying it forward, because this is really it's the story of all of us together, right? So my connection to the basics of Chassidus is no more than your connection to the basics of Chassidus. So let's share it.
Just concluding based on that, and let's say, since Chassidus is really, and Chabadis is really getting at tapping into and living from that, who you really are, like we were talking about, what's some practical tool you might recommend somebody begin learning and practicing so that they too can really tap into that and live from that? Because it does take work. It's not just a matter of learning. You have to learn it and then apply it and meditate on it and really allow it to soak in, so to speak.
So I could give the short answer or the long answer. It's one thing that authors typically fall into is saying, read page so-and-so, right? Go there. So I'll do that first and say, look at chapter 8, Avodas Hashem, how to serve God as presented by Chassidus, because the first half of the chapter kind of details the regimen of what is the method and system towards successful divine service that Chassidus puts forth. Mm-hmm. The second half of the chapter starts with a segment called Internalizing Chassidus. Let me see.
Part 7.
Right, that's part 7 of chapter, right, of the chapter. So Internalizing Chassidus, page 255. Yes, subchapter 10. So we go through learning Chassidus, transformative study, Chassidic meditation, the importance of Chassidic prayer, right? And then lifestyle, upbeat living, when mitzvahs don't come easy, attitudes, and so on. So we're looking at a lot more than just have this conversation. There is a system in which there's a lifestyle that works well with internalizing Chassidus, and appreciating the answers that Chassidus gives on a very personal level. So that's, in a certain sense, I feel like what you're headed with your question is, how can a person really internalize this? It sounds nice. These are intellectually pleasing ideas, right? But how can we go ahead and internalize it? And of course, basic answer, it's as any part of Judaism, to internalize the neshama, to internalize your soul. That is through the study of Torah and observance of mitzvahs. That is, right, those are the methods in which the neshama is drawn into practical day-to-day life. It's the way we make our heads think like neshama heads, like we make our hands and feet express that pintul yid. That is through Torah and mitzvahs. That is the beauty of these Torah and mitzvahs. In particular, I want to refer back to something you mentioned about meditation. And a lot of what common meditation is, and as discussed in the book, a lot of what common meditation is to try to clear or declutterize the countertop of the brain, and kind of shut down most of your regular thoughts, because our minds are just so busy thinking about everything and anything, right? And tune into a place of calm, right? And you said that at that point you were starting to realize that there's something beyond your thoughts. There's a neshama. There is something deeper. Interestingly, what Hasidic meditation is about is actually to fill the mind. Filled up the mind with thought. Yeah. Focused thought, non-distracted thought, but thought. Learn something that's intellectually stimulating about these ideas. Connect to the ideas on an intellectual level, and then think about it. You'll start sensing the neshama. Mm-hmm. You'll start connecting on a soul level. So what we need to do to process the soul is to allow it to sink in, right? Both in terms of practice and in terms of study, right? When we do a mitzvah, try to be present within that mitzvah. When we study Torah, don't just study the idea, the presentation of the learning, but to try to think into the message, and the message on a personal level. And that neshama will start coming more to fore. It will bring it more to the surface. Yeah,
no, amazing. I just one thing that stuck out, and I'm also reading a little bit, because I've studied meditation and have practiced it for many years now. At least the forms that I've learned, and I can't say that they're all are based from the Torah, and that's ultimately how it led me, thank God, here. But sure. It's really not, and also in my experience, it's not really about emptying the mind. It's about and this may apply more to actually what Hasidic meditation is it's because it's not emptying the mind, which a lot of misconceptions about meditation are, especially if it comes from the East, but it's about observing the thoughts that arise, and that way not choosing to think about, let's say, the mundane thoughts or lots of the different worries and things that come up. And so actually, when you get to a place of stillness in meditation, when you're sitting with your thoughts and the emotions and the sensations, when you get to a place where like you're very present, because a lot of the thoughts that arise are either about what you have to do later today, or worries of how you're going to make a living, etc., or something that happened in the past, all the conversation we have about trauma and things. But when you can actually reach a present moment, the present moment, the brain consolidates lots of information. So that's actually where your mind will have a lot more, almost automatically, thoughts that are filled with Chassidus and Torah and Judaism. So it's almost like you don't have to intentionally sit and try and focus on what you learn in Chassidus, but actually just by not thinking the the worries and the anxieties and just become present. And that way you'll automatically, because that gets you to touch into the yechida in a way, that naturally or automatically gets you to think and have that focused on what the Chassidus and more of those, let's say, godly topics and thoughts.
So quieting down the street noise, as I might call it,
And
is,
you do,
right? It's exactly in Chassidus is seen as only the preparatory step.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? It's the preparatory step. There were Chassidim. You may find this fascinating. There are Chassidim who, before prayer, right, before the morning davening, and
I'm learning that Gemara now. I just learned it today with your uncle.
Okay, and before the the morning even Hasidic meditation, they would say the entire Tehillim.
Okay, maybe I'm thinking of the Gemara and Brachas when they would.
No, it's right. They would say the entire Tehillim. There were some Chassidim, right, as unique individuals, but they would say the entire Tehillim before prayer. Why? I wouldn't call it a common practice. It was right. Some. Why? Tehillim has the power to calm, settle, and cleanse the mind. Interesting. Very interesting. Right? Chassidus is well received in a calm and settled present vessel, right? So as a preparation for their meditation into a Hasidic idea, connecting to divinity, putting a divine idea, putting something of godliness in their brain and digesting it intellectually, they would first try to clean and settle their mind by some Tehillim, right? So what you're describing is, in a certain sense, it's a process to similarly, quiet down thoughts, put things away, right? Listen to the the tones of silence, right? To be able to
Present moment, yeah.
right? Is to be able to appreciate the present moment. And then what are you going to invite into your consciousness once you have achieved a state of presence?
That's what I'm saying. Actually, in that moment, it's not about when in the truly present moment. If somebody has to then intentionally bring up something, they're not really present. That's what I'm saying. When you're really present, that stuff naturally arises.
So this is interesting. You're bringing up a very interesting point.
Yeah.
There's two general approaches to Chassidus. Okay. There's two general approaches, and there are two modalities in how to experience neshama. You can see the neshama as somewhat of an override switch, which you shut off the day-to-day, in the moment busyness of the mind, and you tune into neshama, right? So neshama kind of, you're either in consciousness of the mess of things, or you tune into the neshama frequency and you kind of silence the other sounds that are going on, right? That is one element of Chassidus. And while that is tremendously effective and tremendously beautiful, what it leaves the person with is a little bit of a rift between the routine and their meditative state, their neshama state, their place of calm. Chassidus Chabad has a very, very unique approach to the hecticness and lack of, and uncalm complexities of human personality, the human psyche. Chassidus Chabad says that the neshama, the soul, and the depths of the soul can be welcomed into the psyche itself, into that unsettled place of being everywhere, and reprogram it, refocus it. You don't need to override the routine with Chassidus, but actually Chassidus can become embedded into your day-to-day. Chassidus, therefore, has become, Chassidus Chabad in particular, has become known as a very active Jewish organization. Right? It's the fastest growing Jewish organization with lots of activity. Right? Activity and meditation, you would say, don't really fit necessarily most naturally. Right? And you would say, oh, well, that's maybe the ebb and the flow. It's the give and the take. It's the back and the forth. But Chassidus Chabad has an interesting way of actually embracing and fusing these two. That within the psyche, within the process, the thought processes of, they can be repainted with the colors of Chassidus. They can be gifted that vibrancy that Chassidus has to offer. And we can notice within the very, very routine and mundane, right, what that's really all about. So Chassidus has, in a certain sense, the ability to be on with all the noise. And that is ultimately a step beyond typical spiritual experience, I'll say. Right? It's an interesting one. It's right. It's nuanced. It's a big idea. Right? It happens to be woven through the book a little bit of explaining the unique features of Chabad.
Is that in that chapter? Because I wish we kind of dove into this a little bit earlier. That's so fascinating, because I think I really want to. I want to explore and understand a little bit more of what you're saying.
Yeah. Okay. So it starts developing in chapter 4, which goes into what is Chabad in comparison to the other groups of Chassidus, and then it picks up steam in the end of chapter 6. Mm-hmm. Right, and then it's very much present. The Chabad perspective is very much present in the chapters following, in chapter 7, in chapter 8, in chapter 9. I can literally name each and every chapter as relevant data, because from then on, after chapter 6, it is really displayed in each of them, where you'll find this. So where you'll find this effect. I'll just read one line, if that. Have a look at page 166, is the Yechida absorbed. So we're not looking at Yechida as the abstract, right, soul, but also we're looking at it as being absorbed and integrated within the human psyche.
It's just fascinating. One thing that I'm thinking of that's coming up is, like, let's say somebody, like, I have a practice of meditation before I go out into Chassidus. Like when I'm at yeshiva, I meditate early in the morning in the quiet before Chassidus, and then also we have like some time after Chassidus before davening, and that's what a little bit shorter but more focused on what learned in Chassidus.
Okay.
But I'm sure there's advantages to both, and they're both complementary. But it sounds, because, like you were mentioning that story of somebody like the Hasidim who would read Tehillim, or somebody reading just a mime, some kind of discourse before davening. But the advantage of meditating in the quiet is that you have less distractions. And doesn't mean that distractions are negative, and that definitely we should be able to bring that meditation throughout the whole day, regardless of the environment. But to go straight into that kind of noise and everything is maybe demanding, or just even like there's so many distractions because you still have your eyes open per se. Like if you go out and if one of the first things and you go learn Chassidus and before davening, your eyes, sure they're on the page, but there's different sounds and everything going on. So there's a lot more external information, information coming into the mind, as opposed to in the quiet, you have, there's no sound and your eyes are closed. So there's more attention that you can place internally on, let's say, with the Chassidus that you're learning or whatever the focus is.
Okay, so I think to a certain extent, the exact physical setting is dependent person to person, but in a general perspective, one can see their mind and heart, right, coming up with all these feelings and and thoughts and so on and so forth, as to be their distraction that they need to phase out of. Or we can look at the heart and the mind as the instruments of the Yechida to reveal this divine truth within the tangible, within me, right, that I know of.
Yeah.
So if I'm looking to find my truest voice, what is that truest voice? Is that the most abstract element, or is the most real life element? And let's say, just to put it into practicality, oftentimes a person who can connect very well to the spiritual in a state of meditation will struggle to practice appropriately when caught off guard in a social interaction that doesn't necessarily go their way, or they're meant to feel uncomfortable by somebody else, and they'll kind of lose it, right? And the reason why they lost it, even though perhaps they meditated just that morning on Ahavat Yisrael and Jewish unity and togetherness and just being all cohesively one, right, on a global level. And the reason why they lost it is because in that moment, they didn't have the dim lights. In that moment, they didn't have the quiet. In the moment, they didn't have those ideals. They had the practical.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you have to be able to bring that meditation.
Exactly.
Thank you again very much for sharing your time and this book and all your wisdom that you've been sharing with me, and especially your presence. I've really appreciated our interactions in person, and now being able to record this and share it. Thank you very much again, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again in person soon.
All right, a pleasure. And yes, much hatzlacha in this new season.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll be in touch.
Thank you. We'll be in touch.
All the best.